Brainstorming by Janson Davies. Chapter 1. Thunder Without Warning. Thiana Thorne didn't unpack. She never did. The suitcase on the motel dresser remained zipped, her boots always angled toward the door. The desert town was dry and quiet, nestled between dust storms and the ticking silence of suspicion. Thiana kept to herself, moving like wind before a storm, restless, charged, and always half a second from eruption. Her power wasn't visible at first glance. No glowing eyes, no sparks trailing her fingertips. But inside her, something rumbled. A tension lived in her bones, coiled and waiting. Every few days, it clawed its way to the surface like a rising tide of static. She'd felt it building today, like a pressure behind her ribs. Her body buzzed, the way a radio hums before a thunderclap. The motel's air conditioning shorted out when she walked past it. A neon sign flickered like Morse code when she brushed its wall. She knew the signs, knew what happened if she didn't vent soon. Thiana found a deserted stretch of earth, a scorched plain on the edge of nowhere. Her boots dug into loose sand as she reached skyward. The clouds responded to her, formed out of nothing. She called down the storm, not with words, but with will. And then, release. A bolt leapt from her palms, splitting the sky in electric fury. Thunder followed like applause from angry gods. It danced across the clouds, echoed through the desert, and left her panting, free, for now. It was time to move on. Chapter 2. Static Living. Thiana Thorne had a rhythm to survival. It wasn't graceful or proud. It was efficient. She'd learned which ATMs sparked when lightning touched the casing just right. It was a dance she'd practiced in 27 towns and counting. Stun the camera, fry the alarm system, zap a modest stack of 20s. Never greedy. Just enough to get her a room, a meal, gas, and silence. The authorities had a name for what she did. Vandalism, fraud, theft. Thiana had a different word. Necessity. People had tried to get close before. Motel clerks who asked too many questions. Locals who saw her eyes gleam during thunderclaps. She kept her hood up, her voice low, her footsteps quick. Conversations were risks. Relationships were suicide. It wasn't always this way. She remembered a boy with ginger hair and guitar-calloused fingers. His name surfaced now and then in her thoughts. Leaf, maybe? Liam? Whoever he was, he'd once told her she felt like a storm wrapped in skin. She'd laughed. A real one. Then she kissed him just once, and the television in his living room exploded into static. She ran. Now each day felt like a balancing act on a wire of voltage. Her powers built inside her like steam in an industrial boiler, slow, quiet, inevitable. If she didn't bleed it off, she shook. If she shook too long, she ignited. The desert town was number 28. It had a single diner, 3 motels, and no cell reception. Perfect. She stayed just long enough to drain a few clouds, leaving nothing behind but scorched earth and flickering lampposts. Thiana had once tried journaling. She'd scribbled, "I am not broken. I am just overcharged." But she'd stopped writing after a page. Words were friction. They scraped against her reality like sandpaper on a live wire. She wasn't bitter, just tired. She walked alone, ate alone, slept alone, because anything else risked someone getting hurt. And no matter how monstrous her powers made her feel, Thiana wasn't cruel. That mattered to her. It was the one boundary she hadn't crossed. Yet. Chapter 3. The Release. The sun hung heavy over the desert horizon, baking the sand into waves of shimmering mirage. Thiana chose her spot carefully, a patch of scrubland miles from the nearest cell tower, railroad, or human voice. She didn't need interference. She needed sky. Her boots crunched against bleached gravel as she climbed a dune, each step dragging against the weight in her chest. The power was bloated today, an unbearable swell of static that made her joints ache and her thoughts scatter like leaves. Lightning buzzed at her fingertips, eager and impatient. Thiana closed her eyes. Wind tugged at her jacket. She lifted her arms skyward, fingers spread wide. The storm answered. Dark clouds materialized, thick as spilled ink. They twisted and churned, forming a vortex above her like a portal to some impatient god. Thunder cracked once, then twice, followed by a shaft of electric brilliance that rocketed from her palms and pierced the heavens. It split the sky with a scream. Seconds later, something came tumbling down. Thiana lowered her arms, panting, her body humming like live wire. The thing in the sky, black, fast, wounded, spiraled with smoke before slamming into the desert floor with a bone-shaking crash. Dust and debris surged outward like a shock wave, flattening the brush. She stared. It wasn't a drone, not military, no rotors, no turbines. The metal was too fluid, almost organic. Alien. Thiana descended the dune, pulled toward the wreckage by a mix of guilt, curiosity, and dread. As she reached the edge, the hatch hissed. Shapes moved inside. They poured out, sleek and angular, with limbs too long and eyes like molten silver. Their weapons sparked with quiet menace. No words, no negotiation, just laser fire. Thiana dove behind a dune, adrenaline spiking. Her heart thudded like war drums. She hadn't trained for this. She hadn't used her powers against life before. But the desert offered no escape, and instinct surged like tidewater. She emerged, hands charged with blinding energy, and hurled a bolt into the attackers. It struck with precision, scattering two of them across the sand. She pivoted, rolled, launched another into their ranks. The battle lit the night with a chaos of plasma and thunder. Alien screams fractured the silence. She even fought with her fists when one alien got too close. She fought like caged lightning. The last few retreated, bounding into the wrecked ship. It lifted unsteadily, smoke trailing from a damaged edge, and disappeared into the clouds. Thiana stood alone. The static had burned off. Her hands smoked. Her breath was shallow. Then distant engines, black SUVs converging on the horizon, tires spitting sand like gravel rain. She didn't run. Not this time. She had questions, too. Chapter 4. What comes down? Thiana's fingers trembled. The desert was quiet now, eerily so. No wind, no distant birds, only the charred scent of ozone hanging thick like smoke from an invisible fire. Her heart still thundered, sinking with the faint hum of residual energy in her blood. She'd never killed before. She didn't know if she had now, but she had fought, violently and deliberately. She'd defended herself, and it had felt necessary. Not righteous, not satisfying, just inevitable. Her knees buckled and she sank to the sand. The silence didn't last. Black SUVs approached from the horizon, cutting across dunes like beetles swarming toward light. Their presence was cinematic. Polished frames, tinted windows, a convoy too perfect to be spontaneous. Thiana didn't run. Something told her it would be useless. The lead vehicle stopped 20 yards away. Doors opened in synchronized sequence. A man stepped forward. Tall, squared shoulders, tailored black suit without a speck of dust. His badge glinted briefly in the sun. 3 letters. She didn't catch which. He didn't raise his weapon. Instead, he held up one gloved hand and spoke evenly. "You just stopped an incursion," he said. "A scout pod, preliminary force. You neutralized them alone." Thiana's mouth felt dry. "I didn't mean to hit their ship." The man nodded. "We know. We've been watching." That sent ice crawling up her spine. He continued. "For years. You move often. Hack cash. Stay solitary. But you have discipline. You've never harmed anyone. Until today. She stayed silent. "We debated intervening earlier," he said, "but we also knew they were coming. You saved lives today. Now we're offering you a life of your own." Behind him, another agent stepped forward, holding a folder. Inside, photos, scans, satellite images, Thiana surrounded by storms. Every bolt she'd ever thrown catalogued, every ATM breach noted. She was known, defined. The man stepped closer. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said. "Come with us. We'll teach you how to control it, use it, protect with it." Thiana looked at her hands, still tingling. She'd been alone so long. Being seen felt dangerous. But being welcomed, that was new. She didn't speak. She just nodded. And the storm inside her quieted for the first time in years. Chapter 5. Trial by Storm. The SUV's interior hummed with quiet precision. Leather seats, sterile air, mirrored windows. Thiana felt like a specimen under glass. Her palms still tingled, the energy not quite gone. She stared at her reflection in the tinted glass, as if trying to recognize herself. The man with the badge, Agent Kern, he finally introduced himself, sat across from her, tablet in hand, face unreadable. He hadn't asked her to talk, just to breathe. But that was harder than it sounded. "You never fought back before," he said softly, not looking up. "Until today." She nodded. "It wasn't a choice. They fired first." He tapped the screen, swiped to an image. The alien craft. Then her, mid-battle, arms wrapped in electric halos. "You were precise," he said, "like you knew what to do." "I didn't," Thiana whispered. "I just didn't want to die." Silence settled. Outside, desert gave way to pavement. Civilization returned, but it felt foreign now, too neat, too unaware of what had almost arrived from above. She replayed the fight in her mind, the scream of plasma, the scent of burning ion trails, the look, brief but unmistakable, of fear in the alien's eyes. That haunted her more than anything. She hadn't just defended herself. She'd terrified them. "I hurt people," she murmured. Agent Kern tilted his head. "No people, and you defended Earth." "I'm not a soldier." "No," he agreed, "but you are something we've never seen before, and you chose restraint for years. That says more than power ever could." The SUV turned onto a private road, winding toward a mountain range. A facility emerged, minimalist architecture buried in the rock face, armored yet elegant. It wasn't a prison. It wasn't quite a base. It looked like somewhere science was whispered, not shouted. "Welcome to Project Hurricane," Kern said. Thiana's breath caught. Something about the name felt heavy. Hurricane. Inside the gates, they passed others, figures moving between buildings, escorted by agents, some dressed in quiet uniforms, others cloaked in mystery. One caught her eye. A woman in a silver vest whose skin flickered like prism glass. Another floated 3 inches above the ground, as if gravity were a polite suggestion. Thiana felt like a lightning bolt on legs. The SUV rolled to a stop. Kern opened her door and offered a hand. "We can teach you, guide you. We won't cage you." She stepped out, uncertain. Her powers hadn't exploded. Her world had. Now the aftershocks began. A storm was coming, but this time it might wear a badge. Chapter 6. Stillness. The facility was hushed, not the sterile silence of cold metal halls, but something more deliberate, as if sound itself were filtered, measured. Even Thiana's footsteps seemed to land softer here, her presence absorbed by walls lined with inconspicuous cameras and glass panels too clean to be natural. Her room wasn't a cell. It was simple. Bed, desk, neutral lighting, a window that looked out over cliffs and clouds. It was the first window she hadn't needed to run past. She stood before it, unsure how to feel. She hadn't touched the bed yet. Her powers were quiet. No crackle in her veins, no buzzing in her skull. Just calm, the kind that felt foreign. She wondered if this was what peace felt like, or sedation. On the desk sat a tablet, blinking gently. "Welcome," it said. Below the text, her name, her real name. Not the aliases she used in diner logbooks or motel guest sheets. Not the names she gave to strangers she'd never see again. Thiana Thorne. It looked strange spelled correctly. A knock came, soft. She turned and Kern entered, dressed more casually now, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. "We gave you space," he said. "Wasn't sure if you'd want it." "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "That's a start." He sat across from her. Outside, a distant storm danced along the horizon, a natural one. It felt odd watching lightning without being part of it. "What happens now?" she asked. "Orientation," Kern replied. "But not mandatory. Training if you're ready. You'll meet others. Hear stories." She hesitated. "Is it safe?" Kern's expression shifted, just slightly. Safer than drifting. That wasn't an answer, but it was honest. She studied his face. She'd seen lies before, the sharp gleam of manipulation. But Kern was different, not transparent, not trustworthy, just human and tired. "I hurt them," she said suddenly, voice barely audible. "The aliens." "You saved us," he replied. "But they were scared." Kern said nothing. That silence spoke volumes. Thiana turned back to the window. Somewhere out there, the scouts were regrouping. Somewhere inside her, the storm still lived. She hadn't chosen to be a weapon, but maybe she could choose what kind she'd be. And for the first time in years, she wanted to know more, not just about her powers, but about herself. Chapter 7. Arrival. Thiana woke at dawn, not because of alarms, but instinct. The air here carried a hum, not quite electric, but charged with intent. As she dressed, she noticed the bracelet on her nightstand. Matte black, smooth, blinking faintly. Agent Kern had left it there with a note. "Wear this. It's not a shackle. It's a buffer." She didn't like the implication. Buffer for what? Her powers or their fear? Outside, the compound unfurled like a fortress pretending to be a sanctuary. Wide corridors, glass walkways suspended above ravines, labs she glimpsed only through fogged windows. There were others, not many, but enough. Thiana saw a girl levitate small objects in her palm, like planets orbiting a sun. A man in sunglasses that flickered like flame. No one looked at her too long. Everyone moved with quiet choreography. Her guide was a woman named Syra, elegant, clipped voice, cybernetic implant trailing light from one ear to her collarbone. Syra led her down a corridor lined with files etched into transparent plates. Names, symbols, alerts. "Hurricane was built for beings like you," Syra said. "Not to control, but to understand." "Then why do you watch us?" Thiana asked. "We observe. The world doesn't always understand power, but we do." Syra offered her a tablet. It displayed the alien encounter, recorded, analyzed, annotated. Red circles around lightning bursts. Blue metrics calculating damage, response time, neural spikes. They'd seen everything. "You turned the tide in 28 seconds, Syra said. If they'd reached the town..." Thiana didn't respond. She knew what would have happened. Syra's tone softened. "You don't need to prove anything. You already did." They passed an atrium where two agents debated something. Thiana caught a phrase. "Second wave." Then another. "What if she's bait?" She stopped. "What does that mean?" Syra didn't flinch. Some believe the scouts were testing our defenses. You may be the reason they retreated, or the reason they come back." Thiana's pulse quickened. "So, this isn't over." "It never was." She stared at the lightning bracelet. It felt heavier now. Not containment, not safety, just expectation. Syra led her to a training chamber, wide, padded, surrounded by reinforced shielding. The floor shimmered with embedded tech designed to absorb high-voltage energy. "If you want to begin," Syra said, "we'll guide you, not command you." Thiana stepped inside. For the first time, there was no storm overhead, just the one she was learning to direct. Hurricane hadn't earned her trust yet, but it had her attention. Chapter 8. Offer and Choice. Thiana stood in the training chamber long after the others had left. The energy-absorbent walls still glowed faintly where her last bolt had struck, violet streaks carved like veins into the synthetic padding. She stared at them, unsure whether they marked progress or warning. A screen at the far end flickered. Footage played, her battle in the desert, slowed and annotated with technical overlays. Trajectories, electromagnetic fields, biological stress data. She looked away. Syra entered quietly, her boots making no sound against the chamber floor. "You're adapting quickly," she said, voice measured. Thiana shrugged. "I had years of practice not blowing up." Syra smiled faintly. "This is different." They sat side by side on the bench, silence stretching between them. Beyond the glass walls, other recruits trained, some in combat simulations, others meditating inside electromagnetic null fields. "You're not like the rest," Syra said. Thiana scoffed. "Thanks." "I mean it," Syra continued. "Most of them knew they were special before Hurricane found them. You taught yourself restraint, discipline. You built ethics with no map." Thiana shifted. "And now you want me to unlearn it?" Syra shook her head. "We want you to use it, with purpose." A folder slid from Syra's coat. Inside, a list of agency missions, alien activity across the globe, power signatures flaring in regions with no known enhanced presence, suspected infiltrations. Each entry was a whisper of war. "You're not being recruited as a soldier," Syra said. "But if you want, if you choose, your powers could help prevent what's coming." Thiana studied the data. It felt like a test, not of loyalty, but identity. She pictured motel rooms, desert winds, lightning burning across empty skies. She pictured aliens scattering at her feet, and somewhere in the distance, she imagined others like her, afraid, isolated, misunderstood. No invitation, no folder. "What if I say no?" she asked. Syra didn't flinch. "Then you leave. No surveillance, no pursuit. We wipe the records and you walk. But we hope you stay." Thiana closed the folder. She didn't know if Hurricane was truth or illusion, but she knew what it offered. Purpose, not control, not certainty, just possibility. "I'll try," she said. Not allegiance, not surrender. Just the first crack in the armor she'd worn since childhood. Syra nodded. "Then welcome to the storm." Chapter 9. A new storm. Thiana's days fell into rhythm, but never routine. Mornings began with focus drills, channeling microvolt surges into dampened circuits, threading lightning through mazes of conductive metal. Her instructors tracked neural spikes, praised her precision. But Thiana cared more about what the energy felt like. Less like escape now, more like intent. The facility buzzed with restrained brilliance, codename corridors, whisper-encrypted data hubs, agents in rotations that never seemed to sleep. And in the halls, people like her. She met a man named Roan, tall, quiet, fireproof. Literally. His skin absorbed flame like it was sunlight, and he spoke slowly, deliberately. Roan didn't ask her where she came from. He asked what her storm sounded like when she closed her eyes. It threw her. Then there was Mael, half skeletal nanotech frame, half unfiltered honesty. Mael had no room for pretense. She said what she thought, even if it bit. On their first mission sim, Mael told Thiana her hesitation could get a teammate killed. "You're fast," Mael said, "but you're not decisive. Figure out who you want to be before you burn someone down." Thiana took it personally, until she didn't. She asked Sierra about Mael's past once. Sierra just said she lost someone. Now she saves who she can. The air shifted after that. Outside the facility, another storm approached, the literal kind. Thunderheads swelled on the horizon. Thiana stood on an observation deck one evening, Roan beside her, watching the clouds roll in. "You used to chase these?" he asked. "I used to cause them," she replied. "Now I listen." Lightning struck in the distance. Thiana didn't flinch. Hurricane was strange, sanitized, but it offered something she'd never had: space, not just to exist, but to expand. Kern pulled her aside a day later, mission brief in hand, small town in Wyoming. Anomalous power surges, unconfirmed sightings. "You won't be alone," he said. "Team of 4, Roan, Mael, a technician, you." Thiana stared at the folder, closed it. "When?" "Tomorrow. You ready?" She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "I think I want to be." And somewhere in the distance, thunder whispered, "Yes." Chapter 10. Brainstorming begins. The plane roared overhead, slicing through clouds like a whisper turning into a scream. Thiana sat strapped into her seat, boots planted, fingers relaxed. No lightning in her veins. Yet. She'd learned how to bank the current, hold it steady like breath before a plunge. Roan sat nearby, reading intel off his tablet. Mael was across the aisle, silent, tuning the combat parameters of her nanotech rig. The fourth teammate, Kale, young, sharp-eyed, tech genius, typed rapidly, already breaking down security protocols for their arrival. Thiana didn't know what they'd face in Wyoming. A flare? An alien? A warning? But she knew it mattered. Hurricane had trained her, but not changed her. She still distrusted easy answers, still believed power without compassion was just another kind of violence. Yet, as the ground neared, she realized something. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She was choosing. The jet touched down, quiet as storm clouds, settling over a sleeping town. The team exited fast, precise. Thiana scanned the skies, felt the pulse of unnatural energy nearby. She didn't flinch. The mission was surgical: contain the surge, identify the source, protect civilians. But the air felt heavier than data suggested. As they reached the outskirts, signs of scorched earth told a different story. The flare hadn't been random. Thiana stepped into the center of the field, closed her eyes, raised her arms, and called the storm. It came gently this time, controlled, beautiful. Energy wrapped around her, not as a weapon, but as warning. The clouds glowed violet, mirroring her pulse. Then the message hit her, not auditory, not visual, just presence. She wasn't the only storm caller. Far beyond this town, others awakened. Some scared, some angry, some waiting. She opened her eyes. Her team watched her. The field simmered, and the future felt less like a countdown and more like a question. Thiana smiled, slightly. Just enough. She'd stopped running. The lightning didn't own her. It answered to her now. And the brainstorming had only just begun. The end. Please like and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications.